Good morning, brothers. House of 582, it's good to see us in the building on this morning. We are excited to be here at Kingsman's Coffee with our wonderful brother Jimmy. We are thankful to his organization, his establishment, for allowing us to be here on this morning. Today, the Alphas are up and early for Alphas in the AM to have some coffee, some tea with a wonderful conversation with Miss Powell, the granddaughter of our very own House of Alpha, Miss Annie Singleton. And we're so excited to have her with us on this morning. The brothers of the new Powell Lambda chapter are out having a good time doing what we do. Alphas believe in getting up early, and we are definitely excited to have her with us on today to not only talk to us about her story a little bit, but just talk about what she's doing. We never really get a chance to touch history, but today, the brothers of the new Powell Lambda chapter are intentional about getting the chance to really, truly touch history. So we want to welcome you, having you with us on this morning.
I appreciate the invitation. Glad to be here.
Thank you. We're going to just jump in directly into some conversation on this morning. And we've had the chance to talk briefly from time to time, but mainly just want to be intentional about just getting a chance to connect with you. So we're going to jump right in. So tell us about home. Where are you from? What was life like in your hometown during the time you were growing up?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, which is several miles, come to think of it, because that's in western New York, almost in Ohio. And Nana and the Alphas' history is from Ithaca, which is central New York. So by the time I was around Annie C. Singleton with any regularity, she was rather old since she was born during Reconstruction, and I didn't come along until 1946. When I was quite young, like probably in the early 1950s, Jewel Callis and Jewel Kelly came to visit Nana, my grandmother Annie Singleton, in Buffalo. And that was my main connection at that time. I was so young, I didn't know any different. Here were these men who came to see Nana.
Awesome. And it's amazing how we call her Annie C. Singleton and you call her Nana.
Right.
So we know that's a different personal connection because my boys called their grandmother Nana. And so anytime Nana would come in, it was always being an exciting moment because their Nana was always connected to phenomenal people as well. So we know that connection is personal when it comes outside of any other name that we could use, but we're excited that you had that personal connection. And then when it comes to Nana, tell us about what was she like in your relationship. You said she was, you were younger, but we know what we read about her, but is there anything that you could tell us about her that would stick out? We're going to have some of our brothers that we represent Annie's boys, but is there anything in particular that you could tell us that we may not know or may not read about in the history books?
Offhand, no. But again, by the time I came along, she was, let me see, she was pushing 80 because she died when she was 86. So when I was around her, I was quite young and she was pretty old.
Okay. So now what got you from Buffalo to Dallas? Tell us about that.
Okay, where to begin? My dad's family was from Indianapolis, Indiana. I grew up a railroad kid because my dad worked for New York Central Railroad. And y'all probably aren't old enough, well, there may be a few of you that are, to remember when the railroad started going south. Because when I was a little kid, there were things like people had their own, people with a lot of money had their own rail cars and would travel cross country and all of that. But by the time I was getting old enough to realize much of anything, my dad, who had been a dining car waiter on New York Central Railroad, had to leave that because he was having to travel from Buffalo to New York to actually get on the train to do his job. So we ended up moving back to Indianapolis, which was his home, upon the deterioration, as it were, of the railroads. We made it that far. Yeah, okay. So I graduated from high school in Indianapolis, met my husband at Fisk University for that Howard person who was here in Nashville back in 1964. And he actually was on the Alpha Spring line at Fisk. But he was a farm boy from North Carolina and didn't have the money to go through all of the changes that at that time young men had to go through in order to be part of the fraternity. So he was on the spring line, but he didn't go over in the fall. In any case, that was during the time of the Vietnam War, and although he was not a Vietnam vet, he was a Vietnam era vet. So when he got out of the Army, he went to a job fair because his family was from North Carolina, and he was offered a job ultimately by Texas Instruments, which is how we ended up in Texas back in 1972.
Wow, that's amazing. When we talk about the connections of the fraternity, and we are just honored to have you here, can you tell the brothers how you and I got connected? I know sometimes you get your hair cut in certain places, and people want to know the story. How did we get connected? I'll let you tell that story.
I have a good friend and bowling buddy whose nephew is a barber down 6300 Samuel Boulevard in South Dallas. And one day after bowling, we had gone to get haircuts. And I noticed his vehicle parked out in front, black and gold, license plate holder, Alpha Phi Alpha, everything. So although I don't usually go through all of those changes, I went inside the barber shop and asked, who does this car out here belong to? And what is Jay's last name?
Jefferson.
Jay Jefferson was in there that day, and who are you? I see all this Alpha regalia out here, and I'm Annie Singleton's granddaughter. And he introduced himself and so forth and so on, passed the information on, and as they say, the rest of it's history.
Well, we definitely appreciate, if you walk out to the parking lot right now, you're going to see some of those same license plate covers.
Oh, yes.
So we definitely represent the fraternity the best we can. At this time, I'm going to allow some of our brothers, if you have any questions, I know some brothers are dying to ask a few questions. At this time, if any brother has a question, we're going to let you ask her.
Then hope that I could give you a reasonable answer. Probably the grandmother of America, I was thinking. When I was around her and she was old, she was blind because she had suffered from the glaucoma and the cataracts and could only really detect light, shadows, and things like that. So she was really easy to get along with. As she got older, unfortunately, she would be talking to her first husband, I'm assuming, who she had married probably in the 1890s, before she married Archie Singleton. And she would wake up sometimes after a nap and would be calling for Eddie, who was Eddie Fagan, her first husband. So I wasn't around her really when she was young enough to be really active. Those of you who know your Alpha history will be aware that Miles Page was the national president, like 1939, something like that. And his sister, who was a registered nurse, moved from Montgomery, where the family was from, to Buffalo in order to take care of Nana, who at that point could not take care of herself. So they lived across the street from us in Buffalo. And she was always, when I'd get out of school, like in 3rd, 4th grade and all of that, I would go across the street, spend the time with Nana and Aunt Ruth. So I knew her only basically as this little old lady. I wish I had better information to give you.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Good morning. Who's your grandmother's favorite jewel, and did you get to meet any of the jewels before they passed? I think the last one passed in 76.
Wow, was it that long? The only two that I'm aware of having met at all were Jewel Callis and Jewel Kelly, who I met in the early 50s.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I don't, well, look, would your grandmother say that she had a favorite child? No.
I'm with my grandmother's favorite.
Obviously. As a kid, my mother, who was a card-carrying member of the Musicians Union, was a pianist and organist. So we went to a Methodist church up the street from us in Buffalo, off of Main Street. And other than that, not really. One point I did remember, the house that Nana lived in later on was at the back of a long lot. You know, one of those, I don't even know what you call it, real estate wise. But there was a parking area at the front of it out by the street. And that was where, when it was time to vote, the city would set up a voting booth. So she was all, even as somebody who may not have gone to, gone downtown to get registered, go through all of that stuff, was somebody who was active in, not politics per se, but at least active in the community as much as she could be for somebody who didn't have eyesight. He was from, Post Office Box 439A, Wade, North Carolina, outside of Fayetteville. So that family is from the Fayetteville area. Good question. I'm trying to think of a good way to answer that. The Coleman sisters, as it were, Annie C. Singleton. There was Susie McDonald, who, if you look up your history, you'll see was involved with the civil rights movement in Montgomery back in the 50s. Aunt Laura, and these sisters lived in adjacent houses on Cleveland Avenue in Montgomery. Aunt Laura, I think, died like 1953, 1954, something like that. And my first time I was ever on a plane was when my mother took me to Montgomery, and I believe that was when Aunt Laura died, probably about 1953. But that was a family that was involved in all sorts of things in the community. I have a friend with whom I went to Fisk back in the 60s, whose dad ran a drugstore down the street from where Mama Sue lived, who was Annie Singleton's younger sister. I think maybe Nana was born 1871. Mama Sue was born 1875, más o menos. So that was a family that was quite active in Montgomery even at that time. It probably wasn't even called civil rights then. But I want to say that Mama Sue had a place that Adrian used to tell me they called McDonald's Farm. And she, Nana's sister, was arrested during the Montgomery bus boycotts. And they wrote it up in the newspaper as that nigger woman, Mrs. Susie McDonald, was arrested for being on this bus when, that kind of thing. So that even at that time, they gave Nana's sister the respect that the community held for her at that time. The family dispersed a lot. Obviously, Nana didn't spend her whole life in Montgomery. She moved north and all of that. But as far as I know, Mama Sue, who lived to be 95 years old, her sister, kept active for decades. I try not to. But like I said, when I first met Jay at the barber shop, every now and then it comes out. And I'm so glad, because this is my 80th year, to have the opportunity to be here with y'all today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not that I can recall offhand. I sent you that photograph,
Right.
which I do have with me, as a matter of fact, today, if anybody would like to see it, of Nana and Aunt Ruth, but in general, no. I mean, she was a little old lady. She couldn't take care of herself at that time, so she was doing the best she could with what she had available. I am so glad that Alpha Phi Alpha is well as, because I have uncles and a granddad who were Qs. So the Kappas and the Qs and the Alphas have continued to grow and prosper through the generations. I'm so happy to see that this organization is still active and doing well into the 21st century. And I'm assuming will continue to do so in the future. I never did, to my knowledge, I never did get a chance to visit that house in Ithaca. I wish I had now.
Any other final questions, brothers? Well, again, is there anything else that you would like to tell us before we get ready to close out? We know you have a busy schedule, but again, we just want to say thank you. Are there any remarks or anything else you would like to close out?
Again, I appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to see y'all come out. I am so proud of Alpha Phi Alpha and what has been accomplished by the members of this organization through the years. And as I said, I'm anticipating great things in the future. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Thank you.